Welcome, brew tubers. So I'm hoping this is going to be somewhat of a shorter video. I can't promise that though. So what am I brewing today? I am brewing a barbecue beer for a friend. I told him all about my home brewing, and he had a barbecue coming up sometime in April, nearing the end of April. It's the Easter break, and he said, could you make a beer for me? So I am using the Cascade Pale recipe from the Bible. You can never stray far from... found a Campton tablet on the floor. Can never stray far when you brew a recipe from the Bible. So, and I also have a shit ton of Cascade. So big shout out to Timmy Jenkins and the Hop Raffle, and Hazy Days Brewery. I was lucky enough to win one of those raffles, so I got 500 grams of Cascade. I actually ordered some Cascade to brew this beer before I won the Hop Raffle, so I've got something like 800 grams of Cascade. So I need to start making some very Cascade orientated beers over the next couple of months to use those up. So, do you want to run down the recipe? The recipe is very straightforward. The recipe is something like 5.25 kilos of Golden Promise and about 260 grams of Carapils, some dextrin malt. Then there's Cascade at 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, and Whirlpool, I think. There's no dry hop. Expecting to turn this beer around fairly quickly. So I've only got about less than 4 weeks. So exciting times. And it will be my first beer I'm serving off keg outside of the Keezer. So expect another video on how I'm going to do that. So, recipe from the Bible. If anyone's not familiar with what the Bible is and you've read about it and you've not been sure what it is this book here by Greg Hughes. This is homebrew beer, and there's a ton of really good recipes in here, which have been, I would imagine, brewed thousands, if not tens of thousands of times. So what am I brewing? I am brewing the one of the pale ale. I can't find it right now. Here we go. It's one of the pale ale recipes. There's quite a few in here. I think there is about 4 different single hop. There's an Amarillo, there's an East Kent Golding single hop pale ale. There is a Nelson Sauvin single hop, a Cascade, and a Saz. And then just a straightforward pale ale. So they more or less all follow the same grist, but they give some indications to the type of hop schedule, which is really good. So what did I say earlier? I got it wrong. Cascade at boil, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, and flame out, which I will whirlpool. I am fermenting this with USO 5 because it just calls for Y yeast 1056. So just a clean American ale yeast. Expecting, this is 23 litre batch. I'm basically just aiming to fill a keg, and its estimated ABV is 5%. I'm shooting for 1047, I think. 1047. But all good. So once the mash is done, I can do the pre-boil gravity, talk you through that stuff, and see how close we've got this bad boy. Hey guys, so just doing some quick brew day prep before we get brewing. I literally just came back from a town with this from Wilco, which is just a 30 litre container, but ideal for measuring out and storing the grains before mashing in, which you'll just find if you do the prep, it just shortens the mash day. And also fairly easy just to sort of hold on to and pour into the mash tun. So Hopefully that's going to work really well. Also, fairly recently, I've upgraded to using one of these, which was off eBay. I think it was about £8, but cost about the same for postage. It's a 50 or 60 litre airtight container, ideal for a whole sack of grain. And it has one of these spring-loaded rings that go on the top that hold the lid on. But actually, I think once you've done a couple of brews with a sack of grain, is you can then fit all of your other grains in, you know, your smaller packs of grain. So yeah, I pretty much keep everything in here now, which is ideal. Just keep any potential visitors away, like the mice, and also just keep things nice and fresh. So there you go, couple of upgrades. Hello guys. Right, so I am just getting the water up to temp, very near to mashing in. Obviously done some prep, so the grains are all sorted. So I'll just talk you briefly through some of the water adjustment type stuff that I do. So this is just a pail. So there isn't a huge adjustment that's needed. The water here in Southampton tends to be very, very hard. So alkalinity is the main thing that I have to deal with. And the thing that I tend to use in terms of dealing with that is this stuff here. So this is known as AMS or CRS. Effectively, it reduces alkalinity, but also, as the payoff, adds chloride and sulfate, which is fine if that's the style of beer that you're looking for. But it does have some limitations in terms of style. So if I was making a very subtle lager type style beer, I might struggle a little bit. So at some stage, maybe have a look at RO water type solutions. Who knows? So we are just getting up to temp now. I'm shooting for a 65 degrees Celsius mash. So this is a fairly light bodied beer, sort of medium to light. So I'm shooting for a strike temp of 70 degrees. We are fairly close. In fact, I just turned the elements off, so it's just dropped a few degrees. And I'll also have sorry about all the camera shake, also have my pump running, which I need to remember to turn off during the mash, which I've cocked up a few times. So I'm going to mash in. See you guys in a second. Ooh. Okay, guys. So all mashed in. This is not going to be a big beer, so it's quite a thin mash. I'm just going to check the mash pH now. Make sure that's on target. So I'll try and show you guys that whilst we're there. Right, sometimes find it helps to give it a quick stir. 5.6, it's coming down. 5.5. Yeah, I'm fairly happy with that. I don't think we're going to need to do too much adjustment with that. I think it will come down as the mash progresses. Happy days. Okay, so we're mashed in. I've checked the mash pH and I'm quite happy with that at about 5.5. So I had a strike temp of 70 degrees and shooting for 65, and we are, I would say, on 66, pretty much 65 and a half. So really happy with that. That should be right on the money, and as long as I can maintain that. Importantly, I have switched off the pump. Addition today is I've added this very rudimentary flick switch for the pump. It's a bit scrappy at the moment, but much easier than plugging plugging it in, unplugging it, plugging it in, unplugging it, etc. So quite pleased with that. That's all working. So the pump is off. That means the mash temps should stay fairly stable. Got the old trusty sleeping bag out. All good. So I'll see you guys in an hour. Something sort of exciting that I thought I'd share with you guys. It's payday yesterday, so I've treated myself to some new glasses. I've been dead keen to get some of these. Seen quite a lot of you guys using these. They look really smart, so kind of IPA style glasses. This is a tasting kit. Apparently this is a stout glass, a wheat beer glass, and an IPA glass. So nice addition to the collection. So I've got my collection of glasses going on over here. Makes sense to kind of get the beer glasses out here, seeing as the kegerator is out here. So I've only got one beer on tap at the moment. I've just kicked 2 kegs and bottled the Mexican hot chocolate stout, which you will have seen in the last video, which I tried to bottle primarily in small 330 bottles, but didn't have enough, so some are in 500ml bottles. Guess I'll just have to suck it up, man up, and just have a near on pint of 8% beer. I'm sure I can survive. So I managed to bottle off the keg, which was the first time I've done that. I took some inspiration from a video from Brews, just on how to flush the bottles using a CO2 system. So I'll show you guys in a minute what that looks like, just using a picnic tap. And then, I'll show you in a second. Right, sorry, I just had to sort something. So I have 4 taps on the kegerator, on the Keezer, one of which you'll notice is an intertap. So you've got the adjustable nozzle. I have one of the growler filler nozzles, which I think I have here. Whoop. There goes the cups. So I use this, which I can attach onto that particular tap. I've cut off a piece of tubing at an angle, basically attach it to that one tap, and I've got a secondary regulator in the Keezer, which I will show you. So I've just got one secondary reg. So I've got 2 pass-through. So I've got 2 connections running off just standard pass-through, which is about 12 psi. And then I can knock this down to whatever I need. And I've got another 2 connectors there. And so I can just lower the PSI right down to like 2 or 3 PSI, and effectively just bottle off this one tap simply by connecting up to whichever keg using that beer out connection there. So worked really well. Managed to bottle off fairly quickly, and it just seemed so much easier than bottling with a wand, you know, adding priming sugar and all the rest of it. I don't know why. Probably isn't any easier. Just in my mind, it seemed novel because it was the first time. So that's all bottled, and I would imagine I'm probably not going to touch any of that Mexican hot chocolate stout for at least 2 or 3 months now, fully expecting most of it to be on the shelf for the next 10 to 12 months, maybe Christmas time. So we'll see. It should be hopefully a good beer. Right, another brewery update. Last video I showed you that I'd put some shelving up here. I have now also added some shelving this side, which primarily is for some tools. but obviously I can add some brewing stuff here as well. So just kind of really building this out. I've only been in the house 18 months maybe, so I've done a lot. This was just a bare garage. I built this workbench. So I built this entire workbench from recycled wood. So yeah, added all of these shelving units in. It's now pretty busy in here, but good man cave, nice breweries coming together. Really pleased. Right, so after all the faffing around with checking the pH, there was something niggling me, and so I decided to recheck the mash pH, and it actually came out about 5.75. And I'm glad I rechecked, so I added about 4 ml of phosphoric acid just to bring that down. So it's now at sort of 5.35, something like that, which should absolutely aid conversion and make sure I hit the numbers. So I'm glad I checked that. Often worth checking twice if something's in your gut telling you it's not quite right. So glad I did. So we're going to have a little pour of the amber ale into the new IPA glass. Not quite the right beer for it, but oh well, what are you going to do? So how am I going to do this? There you go. They're ready. Oh, nice bit of beer pouring for you. So this beer, I'm just going to turn the music off. Whee! There we go. So this beer is a DIY Brewdog recipe called the Physics, which is a precursor to the 5 AM Saint. As you can see from the colour, it is not really an amber beer. I would probably put this more into brown porter territory. Now there's a reason for that, and that is because the recipe that they published has a decimal point error in the dark crystal. And this is something that a friend of mine, Mike, at our local brew club, the Butcher's Hook Brew Club, told me about, because he'd brewed it before. He'd spotted it. I did not. I was a lemming and just followed the recipe. But it has actually made a pretty decent brew. So there's a lot of dark crystal in it, and that is accounted for the colour. It's pretty heavy, but nonetheless looking like a good beer. Tasting like a pretty good beer. Right, lots of updates in this video. So quick update on the last brew day where I brewed. It was double brew day going on. So we've got the Shule Melon New England IPA. We've got the Kitchen Sink Usurper, see what I've done there, IPA. So both of which have now completed fermentation. I've raised the temp. They've had diacetyl rest. The temp is still fairly high at 21 degrees. They've both had dry hops. The IPA has had a single dry hop. The New England New England IPA has had 2 dry hops. So there was the first, which was the biotransformation dry hop, which was at day 2, and then it's had a 7-day dry hop as well. So both of those are going to get kegged in about, what's the date today? About 5 days. So I'm really looking forward to that. In addition to the fact that I'm going to have an actual IPA to go in my IPA glass. happy days. Okay guys, so the mash is done. I'm just in the process of mashing out, and we are just recircling whilst the mash out is going on. So fairly nice clarity going on there. Hopefully it will clear up as I start to recirc. All good. So I need to raise to 75 degrees over 7 minutes apparently. Okay guys, so mash is done, so I'm just going to check the pre-boil gravity with my refractometer. So I believe we are shooting for 1037. So I have, by the looks of it, 1040. Yeah, 1040. So I've overshot that slightly. Not sure how I've done that, but it's only a few points, so I'd rather be above than below. May mean the ABV is a little higher than expected, but should only be just over 5%, which I think would be okay for a barbecue beer. Yeah, all good. Okay, so I've now completed the boil. It's been a fairly hitch-free brew day so far. Going back to a point from the last video, I think I've optimized the bag straining method, which is good, and didn't make too much mess. But that being said, this was a smaller grain bill, so it wasn't so much in the bag to have to handle, but that's all good. So at the moment, the water is down to 80 degrees or slightly less, and it's just whirlpooling. So I've been whirlpooling for about 15 minutes now, which is the last of the Cascade. Quite a big 68 grams of Cascade in there in the whirlpool. The pump is just spinning that round nicely. The pump seems to be managing things well, which is good. And I'm feeling a little bit half cut after about 4 pints of this funky super dark crystal amber. Cheers guys. Right, this is not the amber beer. That is a brown porter, and I think that's actually lighter than the amber beer. So this is a brown porter from the Bible, which I added 200 grams of lactose to and 100 grams of crushed coffee beans, and effectively made a coffee porter. And it's one of the best beers I've made so far. It's absolutely smashing. Really nice beer. I will add 100 grams of crushed coffee beans is far too much. Really overgunned it the first week, 2 weeks in the keg. I think I had alcoholic fizzy coffee. But it calmed down over a little time. It's still very coffee. In fact, it's probably not a great time to be drinking it at 10:30, given I imagine the caffeine content in this. I don't know whether you get caffeine from coffee beans, adding it into beer or not, but given as I had 100 grams. So in future, I think I'd like to try it with less than half, to see what it's like. I actually added it to the keg as opposed to the secondary, and it works fine. Just used one of those stainless steel keg dry hop things. Yeah, and it worked really well actually. It was good. I had a little dry hop of Bramling Cross. Yeah. And I actually added the lactose in the keg. It was a pretty last minute thought. The reason is I tried the round pour and I thought it's a good beer, but it's just a bit one dimensional. So I decided to vamp it up And interestingly, I boiled the lactose with some water in a saucepan. I slowly added it to the keg, even after it's carbonated. It worked out fine. So if you ever want to add some lactose to a beer after it's kegged and carbonated, go for it. You can do it. Top tip for the day.